Today's Swamp Talk is recognizing some of the most incredible teachers I ever had. It's funny, today I was moving some stuff around in the closet, and on top of the shelf, one of the old yearbooks from 7th grade fell to the ground. And I opened it up and I spent most of the morning looking through it and just, going down memory lane. And I was just thinking, going back, all the teachers I had, professors I had, and there's a few that really stood out, and I just wanted to kind of just recognize them, even though most of them probably are no longer alive, because I'm an oldster as it is. But I'm going to probably posthumously recognize some of the great teachers. And the first great teacher I ever had was first grade, Mrs. Ulrich. I've always been an introvert, and first grade, going into a bigger school from kindergarten, that was actually very terrifying for me, and Mrs. Ulrich just made that transition very comfortable and calm, even though, even at that age, one of the bullies in my life that I had to grow up with was also in that class too. And I think on the very first day of school, he was already bullying me. But Mrs. Ulrich took care of things. She made everyone feel comfortable. Just a great teacher, and I learned so much, and that's an important year where you really learn the basics and things like that. So definitely up there, Mrs. Ulrich, as a great teacher. And then I would have to go to 4th grade, which the bully was in that class again too. Mrs. Rosenberger. But what I liked about Mrs. Rosenberger is she didn't take any mess. She didn't play any games. It was all about learning. And I learned probably the most out of all my classes in Mrs. Rosenberg's classes, because she didn't play around. She didn't take no mess. She put the bully in place. And I learned a lot. And a lot of it was like boring stuff at the time. I was bored, but it was important stuff that I needed. And, a lot of vocabulary and learning, language arts and things like that. That was a big part of 4th grade, and she really pounded it into us so that we always remembered it. And there's certain things that I do just subconsciously now that she used to do. I do all the time. So she was hardcore. She wanted to teach the kids. She said, "You're going to learn something, in this class." So Mrs. Rosenberger, 4th grade. That was a rough class too. There were some really characters in that class, but she was great too. It was awesome. And actually, it's weird, kind of like years later, when I worked for the airlines, I actually ran into her and her sister, because her sister was a teacher at the school too. So that was kind of cool. And then 6th grade, Mrs. Yo. Mrs. Yo was the coolest teacher I ever had. And when it comes to teaching, it's just not only the teacher that makes the class. It's actually the elements of the class, who's in that class. You can have, speaking from experience, you can have like a mixture of the right amount of kids and the different personalities and stuff that just gel, and they make the class a really good class for learning and things like that. And then other times, you have chaos. But in Mrs. Yo's class, it was the perfect mix of kids, and everybody got along, and she just took that and ran with that, and we learned a lot in 6th grade, particularly a lot of social studies, which is, that's near and dear to my heart, social studies. And she was great. She'd bring her husband in, and he would talk, because he was flying in the B-52s during World War II over Germany and stuff like that, and he had great stories to tell us that would just keep us, enthralled. And what was cool about Mrs. Yo, at the end of the year, she would invite her entire class to her house for a pool party. And that was so cool. It was a great time, and I really bonded with a lot of the kids that were in that 6th grade class. It was a great class, great teacher. And then also at my elementary school, we had the greatest PE teacher, Mr. Pachter. He was just passionate about physical education, particularly running, which it was, the late 70s, mid to late 70s, and running was like the big thing. And he actually created a mini-thon or a mini marathon for us to run, which I thought was so cool. You know, where we would run and it was all tracked out and we get awards and things like that. He was really passionate about stuff like that. I would always see him as a kid running in the, you know, in the neighborhood and things like that. And then he also would do this, and I had no clue what it was. He would do like a March Madness where we would play basketball, and he'd have all the college names up there, and he would assign our teams, different colleges and stuff. And each week we would go through and see if we were moving up in the ranks and stuff, which I thought was really cool. And he played this game called Bounce Ball, which was such a fun game to play. Actually, it got so popular that during recess, after lunch, there would be bounce ball tournaments that you could go and watch. And I was really good at that because I could jump really high. You would bounce the ball, and if you got hit, you were out. You know, it's not like dodgeball. It was more like you had to bounce the ball one time, and then if it hit you, you would be out. But I was always really good at jumping, you know, and I used to like taunt the opposing team, and I would jump up like a David Lee Roth, you know, split leg jumps, and the ball would go right underneath me and stuff, and then my buddy behind me would catch it, and that was fun stuff. So, you know, very creative teacher, or PE teacher, so that was really cool. And then when I got into junior high school, probably the greatest teacher I ever had, and I've already talked about this teacher before, Mr. Lacaruba. Wood shop, metal shop teacher. Just great teacher. I learned so much practical stuff that I use all the time from that class, and made really cool stuff. And like I said, he would tell us stories about growing up during the Great Depression, you know, poor as a kid, and he would say, you don't just learn how to make birdhouses in here, you learn about life, which I thought was really cool. And those are the teachers that really impacted me. When I got to high school, I was more focused on working and cars and music and things like that. So I don't have as many impactful high school teachers, but the junior high and the elementary school, those are some teachers that just were amazing. And I'm glad and I'm lucky that I had them as teachers. And that's my swamp talk for today.